The room smelled like burnt coffee and panic. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold the report, the numbers blurring in front of me as sweat dripped down my back. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not today. "Clara, explain yourself." Greg barked, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. His face was red, veins bulging on his forehead, and all eyes were on me. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making the tension unbearable. Everyone sat frozen, watching me like I was some kind of monster instead of the person who just saved their company millions. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out at first. My throat felt dry, tight, like I'd swallowed sandpaper. "It's right here," I finally managed, pointing to the glaring error I'd caught. A mistake that would have cost them everything if I hadn't noticed it. But instead of gratitude, they looked at me like I'd betrayed them. "You made us look incompetent," Greg snapped, leaning over the desk, his breath hot with rage. Then he said it, the words that still echo in my nightmares. "You're fired." Just like that. Years of loyalty, late nights, missed birthdays, gone. I stumbled out of the office, my heels clicking against the cold tile floor, heart pounding in my ears. How could they do this to me? If you want to hear how I turned the tables and took control of my life, subscribe now. You won't believe what happens next. Let me tell you about the people in this story, because they're not just names or roles, they're pieces of my life, for better or worse. I'm Clara Hayes, and if I had to describe myself, I'd say I'm the kind of person who shows up early, stays late, and always tries to do the right thing. Maybe that's why getting fired felt like such a betrayal. It wasn't just losing a job. It was losing a part of who I thought I was. I've spent years trying to prove myself, to make something out of nothing, because growing up with a dad who left when I was 8 taught me one thing. No one's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. Then there's Greg. Oh, Greg. He's the kind of man who wears arrogance like cologne. Too much, too obvious, and impossible to ignore. He runs the financial firm where I worked, but ran is generous. What he really does is take credit for other people's work while keeping his hands clean. To him, employees are disposable, replaceable cogs in his machine. And me? I was just another cog until I became inconvenient. The way he looked at me that day, the anger, the disdain, it made me feel small, invisible, like all those years of hard work meant nothing. But deep down, I think Greg's biggest fear isn't failure. It's being exposed for what he truly is, a fraud. And then there's Rachel. She's complicated. At first glance, she seems sweet, helpful even. Always offering coffee or asking how your weekend went. But scratch beneath the surface, and you'll find ambition so sharp it could cut you. She wanted my position, plain and simple. When Greg fired me, she didn't lift a finger to stop him. Instead, she smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "I guess things happen for a reason." That stuck with me. Was she right? Did I deserve this somehow? Finally, there's my dad, or rather, the ghost of him. His absence looms over everything. I barely remember his voice now, but I remember the silence after he left. The way Mom cried herself to sleep every night. For years, I wondered why he walked away. Was it something I did? Something I didn't do? Then came the letter from the lawyer, revealing not only that he left me half the company, but also secrets that changed everything I thought I knew about him. These people aren't perfect. They're messy, flawed, real. They hurt each other, lie to themselves, and sometimes try to be better. Isn't that what makes them human? Keep listening, because their choices will change my life forever, and maybe yours too. Let me take you there, to the place where it all fell apart. The office at Cedar Ridge Financial wasn't fancy, but it had its own kind of character. Or maybe character is too generous a word. It was cramped and tired, with beige walls that looked like they'd been painted in the 90s and never touched again. Fluorescent lights buzzed constantly overhead, casting a sickly glow over everything. On sunny days, slivers of golden light would sneak through the cheap blinds, slicing across desks cluttered with papers, coffee mugs, and forgotten pens. But today felt darker, heavier, like the air itself was pressing down on me. The carpet was worn thin in spots, especially near the copy machine where everyone gathered to complain about Greg or gossip about Rachel. You could smell the faint scent of toner mixed with stale coffee from the break room. It lingered no matter how many times someone tried to air the place out. That morning, though, the coffee pot burned, filling the office with an acrid smell that made my stomach churn. It was fitting somehow, like the universe knew what was coming before I did. When Greg called me into his office, the atmosphere shifted. His space was different, bigger, colder, sterile. A fake plant sat in the corner, collecting dust, and framed diplomas hung crookedly on the wall, as if even those symbols of success couldn't quite stay straight under the weight of his ego. The leather chair creaked when he leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk, his face inches from mine. I can still feel the heat radiating off him, hear the sharp intake of breath before he delivered the blow. "You're fired." Outside, autumn was in full swing. Through the window, I could see leaves swirling in the wind, fiery reds and oranges tumbling across the parking lot. Normally, I loved this time of year. The crisp bite in the air, the way the sunlight softened at the edges. But not today. As I walked out of the building, the cold hit me like a slap. My heels clicked against the pavement, echoing in the emptiness. Cars zoomed by on the nearby road, their tires hissing against damp asphalt. Somewhere a dog barked, kids laughed, life went on. But for me, the world had stopped spinning. This place, these sensations, they're more than just details. They're part of who I am now, tangled up in my memories, shaping the story I'm about to tell you. Stick around, because this setting holds secrets you won't want to miss. You ever feel like the world just doesn't care about you? Like no matter how hard you try, no matter how many hours you pour into something, it's never enough. That's where I was when they fired me. Not just angry, but hollowed out, like someone had taken a scoop and carved away everything I thought I was worth. It wasn't just losing my job. It was losing my identity, my purpose, the thing that made me feel like I mattered in this chaotic mess of a world. And the worst part? They acted like they were the victims. Can you believe that? After I saved them millions, caught their mistake before it destroyed the company, they turned on me like I was the enemy. I kept replaying it in my head, over and over again. Greg's voice booming, Rachel's silence cutting deeper than any words could, the way everyone looked at me like I'd betrayed them instead of saved them. Why couldn't they see what I saw? Why didn't they understand that I wasn't trying to make them look bad? I was trying to protect them. Protect us. Because we were supposed to be a team, weren't we? Isn't that what work is supposed to feel like? Or am I naive for thinking that? But here's the thing. Getting fired wasn't even the hardest part. The hardest part was realizing how disposable they thought I was. How little loyalty meant to them. For years I gave everything. Late nights, missed dinners with friends, skipped vacations, all because I believed in doing good work, in earning respect. Turns out, respect isn't something you earn. It's something people give you when it's convenient. And when it stopped being convenient, they threw me away without a second thought. Then came the letter, the one that changed everything. When I opened it, my hands shook so hard I almost dropped the paper. Half the company? Mine? Just like that, I went from invisible to untouchable, but it didn't feel like winning. Not really. Because now I had power, sure, but also questions, big ones. What do you do when the tables turn? Do you use that power to hurt the people who hurt you? Is revenge worth it if it leaves you feeling emptier than before? Or do you try to fix things, even though fixing feels impossible? And then there's Dad. Always Dad. His absence shaped so much of who I am. But now his presence, his secrets, are shaping me too. Finding out he left me half the company felt like a punch to the gut. But finding out why, that was worse. He disappeared to protect me, or so I've pieced together. But from what? From who? Every answer leads to more questions, and every question makes me wonder. Would I have done the same thing if I were him? Would you? That's the conflict gnawing at me day and night. Do I tear them down, or build something new? Do I fight fire? With fire or rise above it? Because here's the truth. They deserve to pay for what they did to me. But does punishing them mean I become just like them? And if I walk away, am I letting them win? What would you do? Honestly. If someone took everything from you, lied to your face, and then handed you the keys to their kingdom, what would you choose? Destruction or redemption? Justice or mercy? Stick around, because I'm still figuring it out. And trust me, the choices get harder from here. Walking back into that building for the first time after everything, let me tell you, it felt like stepping onto a battlefield. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This steady thud, thud, thud that drowned out the sound of my heels clicking against the tile floor. The air smelled the same, stale coffee and photocopy toner. But now, it carried an edge, something sharp and metallic, like fear or maybe anger. I wasn't sure which one it was anymore because they felt tangled up together inside me, twisting, tighter with every step I took. Everyone turned to look at me when I walked in, their faces frozen somewhere between shock and guilt. Whispers spread like wildfire, low murmurs that followed me down the hallway. Is she really here? What does she want? Did you know she owns half the company now? Greg saw me before I even reached his office. His jaw tightened, his lips pressed into a thin line. And for a split second, I thought he might actually lose his cool right there in front of everyone. But no, he's too much of a coward for that. Instead, he barked my name, loud enough to make heads snap toward us. "Clara," he said, striding over like he owned the place, which technically he still did, for now. His voice was cold, clipped, like he was trying to assert control even though we both knew he didn't have any, not anymore. "What are you doing here?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell, to throw every ounce of frustration and betrayal back in his face. But instead, I just held up the letter, the proof that half of Cedar Ridge Financial belonged to me, and let the silence speak for itself. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Greg's face went pale, his eyes darting between me and the paper like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "This isn't funny," he finally spat, but his voice wavered, betraying him. That's when the real fight started. He tried to dismiss me, to act like I was some nuisance who didn't understand how things worked. "You can't just waltz in here and start making demands," he snapped, gesturing wildly with his hands. But I didn't flinch. Not this time. "I'm not making demands," I shot back, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I'm stating facts. Facts you can't ignore." And then came the hardest part, sitting across from him in that cold, sterile office, staring at the man who'd fired me without a second thought, and realizing I had power over him now. Power I never asked for but couldn't give back. But it wasn't easy. Oh no, it was anything but easy. Every word felt like pulling teeth. Every glance reminded me of how small they'd made me feel. Rachel hovered outside the door, pretending to organize files but clearly eavesdropping. Her presence made my skin crawl. Was she hoping I'd fail? Hoping I'd crack under the pressure? Probably. And honestly, she wasn't wrong to think it, because as much as I wanted to stand tall, to show them I wasn't the same person they threw away, doubt crept in like a shadow. What if I screwed this up? What if I couldn't handle the responsibility? What if they found a way to take it all back? The tension grew thicker with every passing minute. Greg kept throwing arguments at me, trying to poke holes in my resolve. "You don't know how to run a business," he sneered, leaning forward like he thought intimidation would work. Maybe it would have once, but not now. Now I had leverage. Still, his words stung because deep down, I wondered if he was right. Did I know how to do this? Could I lead people who hated me? Who saw me as a threat? The weight of it pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. And then, there were the employees. Some looked hopeful, others scared, a few downright hostile. They didn't trust me, not yet, and why should they? To them, I was the outsider who'd come back to shake things up. A disruptor. A problem. Their stares burned into me, judgmental and unrelenting. One woman whispered to her coworker, "She'll ruin everything." And those 5 words hit me harder than anything Greg had said. Ruin everything. Is that what I was going to do? Or was I trying to fix it? It was chaos. Pure, unfiltered chaos. And through it all, I kept thinking about Dad. Why hadn't he told me about this? Why leave me to figure it out alone? Was this his plan? To force me into a situation where I had no choice but to confront the truth about myself, about them, about him. If so, it was cruel. Necessary, maybe, but cruel. Because standing there, facing down Greg and Rachel and the ghosts of my past, I realized something. Owning half the company didn't make me powerful. It made me vulnerable, exposed, raw. So here's the question. If you walked into a room full of people who betrayed you, armed with nothing but a piece of paper and your own determination, what would you do next? Would you fight? Or would you run? Stick around because I haven't decided yet. And neither will you. For a while, it almost felt like things were falling into place. Almost. After that first explosive meeting with Greg, the office settled into this strange kind of rhythm, uneasy, but functional. People stopped whispering behind my back, or at least they got quieter about it. And for the first time in weeks, I could breathe without feeling like the walls were closing in. Greg kept his distance, which was both a relief and unsettling. Part of me wondered if he was plotting something, but another part, the exhausted, hopeful part, wanted to believe we'd reach some kind of truce. For now. The employees started coming around too, or so it seemed. A few even thanked me for catching the mistake that saved the company millions. "We didn't know what Greg was thinking," one guy said, scratching the back of his neck like he wasn't sure how much he should admit. Others nodded along, their smiles tentative but genuine. Rachel, though, she was harder to read. She'd been distant since I returned, avoiding eye contact, unless absolutely necessary. But then she surprised me one afternoon by stopping by my desk with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," she said softly, sliding 1 cup toward me. Her voice wavered, like she wasn't used to being vulnerable. "And I'm sorry. About everything." I stared at her for a long moment, searching her face for any sign of insincerity. Was she really apologizing? Or was this just another move, in whatever game she was playing? Still, I took the coffee and muttered a quiet, "Thanks." It wasn't forgiveness. It couldn't be, not yet, but it was a start. Or so I told myself. Things at the firm began to stabilize, or at least appear stable on the surface. Meetings ran smoother. Projects moved forward without constant drama. Even Greg seemed less hostile, opting for terse professionalism over outright hostility. Maybe This whole mess could work itself out after all, I thought. Maybe I could turn this fractured situation into something good, something meaningful. I even started dreaming again, not just about fixing the company, but about building something better. Something Dad would have been proud of. But here's the thing about calm waters. They're often hiding currents beneath the surface. And as much as I wanted to believe everything was okay, little moments kept gnawing at me, planting seeds of doubt I couldn't ignore. Like when I noticed files missing from the shared drive, or when Rachel lingered too long outside Greg's office, her expression unreadable. Or when Greg suddenly became overly friendly during our weekly check-ins, asking questions that felt more like fishing expeditions than casual conversation. "How are you settling in?" he'd ask, his tone light, but his eyes sharp, calculating. And then there was Dad's desk, the one they hadn't touched since he left. I spent hours going through it piece by piece, hoping to find answers about why he disappeared and why he left me half the company. Most of it was mundane. Old contracts, expense reports, notes scribbled in his messy handwriting. But tucked away in the back of a drawer, I found something that made my stomach drop. A folder labeled confidential. Inside were documents I didn't understand at first glance. Names and numbers that didn't add up. Names like Greg's. Numbers tied to accounts I'd never seen before. What was this? Some kind of side deal? A bribe? My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, each one raising more questions than answers. I tried to push it aside, to focus on the progress we were making. But every time someone smiled at me, every time Greg nodded approvingly, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Too convenient. Too clean. Was this really a fresh start? Or was it just the calm before another storm? So here's the question. When everyone seems to have accepted you, when life starts looking brighter, how do you know if it's real or just a mirage? Because deep down, I can't help but wonder, what am I missing? And what happens when the truth comes? Out? Stay tuned because I'm about to find out. Phone call. One of those calls that makes your blood run cold before you even answer it. I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly projections, trying to prove to myself and everyone else that I could handle this new role, when my cell buzzed on the desk. The number was unfamiliar, but something about it felt off, like déjà vu pulling at the edges of my mind. My stomach tightened as I picked up. "Hello?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Clara Hayes?" The man on the other end spoke quickly, his tone clipped and urgent. He identified himself as an investigator from some corporate oversight agency I'd never heard of. At first I thought it was a prank, or worse, Greg's attempt to scare me off. But then he dropped the bombshell. "We've received allegations regarding illegal activities tied to Cedar Ridge Financial. Your father's name has come up." My knees buckled. I sank into my chair, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "What are you talking about?" I managed, though the words barely came out. He didn't answer directly, just asked if we could meet immediately. Immediately, as in right now. Panic surged through me like electricity, making it hard to think straight. What did he mean? Dad's name had come up. Dad was gone. He'd been gone for years. How could he possibly be connected to anything happening today? I agreed to meet him at a cafe downtown, my mind racing the entire drive there. Every red light felt like an eternity, every car horn jolting me further out of whatever fragile calm I'd managed to hold on to. When I arrived, the investigator was already waiting, a tall man with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. He slid a folder across the table toward me without preamble. Inside were documents detailing bribes, offshore accounts, and names linked to shady deals. Names including Greg's. And buried deep within the pile, my dad's signature. The room spun. My breath caught in my throat, choking me. No, this couldn't be real. Dad wasn't perfect. He left us, sure. But he wasn't a criminal. Was he? The investigator watched me carefully, gauging my reaction. Do you recognize any of these transactions? He asked, his voice neutral but probing. I shook my head mutely, unable to form words, because even if I didn't recognize them, part of me wondered. Why else would he leave? Why else would he keep secrets big enough to destroy lives? By the time I got back to the office, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the key in my car door. I kept replaying the investigator's words in my head. Illegal activities. Allegations. Corruption. They weren't just accusations. They were grenades, ready to blow everything apart, including me. If Greg found out, I knew. If anyone found out, I didn't want to finish the thought. But hiding wasn't an option either. Sitting alone in my makeshift office, an old storage closet they'd converted after I returned, I stared at the files, trying to piece together what I was seeing. Some of it made sense, in a sickening way. The missing accounts, the suspicious withdrawals, the tension between Greg and Rachel. It all lined up too perfectly. But other parts? They didn't add up at all. Like why Dad's name kept appearing alongside Greg's. Had they worked together? Betrayed each other? Or was this some kind of setup? Every instinct screamed at me to confront Greg, to demand answers. But fear held me back. Fear of what I might uncover. Fear of becoming complicit in whatever mess Dad had left behind. And worst of all, fear of losing everything again. Not just the company, but myself. Because once you start digging into shadows, it's hard to stop. Harder still to walk away unscathed. So here's the question. When the truth threatens to unravel everything you've fought for, do you chase it anyway? Or do you bury it and hope it stays buried? Stick around, because I'm running out of time to decide. And so are you. Let me tell you about the moment everything inside me started to crack. It wasn't loud or dramatic. No shouting matches, no slammed doors. No, this was quieter, more insidious. The kind of crisis that sneaks up on you when you're already teetering on the edge. Too tired to fight, but too scared to let go. I found myself staring at those files again. The ones the investigator gave me. My hands trembling as I flipped, through page after page of lies and secrets. Each line felt like a punch to the gut. Each name another thread unraveling the fragile tapestry of my life. And then there it was. The thing I couldn't unsee. Proof that Greg had been funneling money into offshore accounts for years. Illegal accounts. Dirty money. But worse than that, my dad's signature was all over them. Not just once, but repeatedly. Like he wasn't just involved. He was complicit. My first instinct was denial. This had to be fake, right? Some kind of smear campaign designed to drag Dad's name through the mud posthumously. Except deep down, I knew better. The dates matched. The handwriting was his. Even the little quirks, like how he always dotted his I's with circles, were identical. There was no denying it anymore. Dad hadn't disappeared to protect me from danger. He'd disappeared because of it, because of what he'd done, because of who he'd worked with. And now somehow I was stuck holding the bag. But here's where it gets messy, where the moral dilemma kicked in and refused to let me breathe. What do you do when the truth forces you to choose between two impossible options? Option 1. Expose everything. Take the files to the authorities, blow the lid off Cedar Ridge Financial, and watch Greg, and maybe even Rachel, go down in flames. Justice would be served, sure, but at what cost? Employees would lose their jobs. Clients would panic. Lives would shatter, including mine. Because if I exposed Greg, I'd have to admit my dad's role in all of this. How could I live with that? How could I face the world knowing I'd destroyed his legacy? Option 2. Bury the truth. Keep the files hidden, pretend I never saw them, and focus on rebuilding the company the best way I knew how. Clean house quietly, move forward without causing chaos. Sounds simple enough, right? Except silence has its own price. If I stayed quiet, I'd become exactly what I hated. A person willing to look the other way for the sake of convenience. A hypocrite. Worse, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if I'd made the wrong choice. Wondering if justice mattered, less to me than self-preservation. The weight of it crushed me, literally. I spent hours sitting on the floor of my office, surrounded by papers, tears streaming down my face as I tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. Every argument I made against exposing the truth felt hollow, selfish. Every reason I came up with for staying silent sounded weak, cowardly. I wanted to scream, to break something, to make the decision disappear. But it wouldn't. It couldn't. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone. About Greg, whose arrogance masked fear. About Rachel, whose ambition blinded her to morality. About the employees who trusted us, or at least tried to. About Dad, whose ghost haunted every corner of this damn building. And then there was me. Who was I in all of this? Was I the hero trying to fix things, or the villain perpetuating the cycle? Was I brave enough to stand up for what was right, or too broken to risk losing everything again? The question swirled in my head like a storm, relentless and suffocating. Do you know what it feels like to question your own values? To wonder if you're capable of doing the right thing, even when it hurts? Because that's where I was. That's where I still am. So here's the question. If you were me, standing at the crossroads of justice and survival, what would you choose? Would you burn it all down in the name of truth, no matter the collateral damage? Or would you bury the past and hope it stays buried, even if it means living with guilt for the rest of your life? Stick around, because I'm running out of time to decide. And so are you. I didn't think it could get worse. I really didn't. But life has a way of proving you wrong when you least expect it, doesn't it? It started with an email. A single, innocent-looking message that landed in my inbox late one night. At first glance, it seemed harmless enough. No subject line, just a few lines of text from an anonymous sender. You know too much. Stop digging. That was all it said. 4 words that sent ice coursing through my veins. My heart pounded, so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Who sent it? Greg? Rachel? Someone else entirely? And how did they know I'd been looking into the files? The next morning, paranoia set in like fog rolling over a valley, thick and suffocating. Every glance felt accusatory, every conversation laced with hidden meaning. Greg avoided me completely, which should have been a relief, but instead felt like a warning. Rachel hovered around me more than usual, her smiles forced, her questions probing. "How's everything going?" she asked one afternoon, leaning against my desk like she was trying to appear casual. But her eyes darted toward the locked drawer where I kept the files, and suddenly her presence felt less friendly and more predatory. Then came the breaking point. The moment when the walls closed in so tight I couldn't breathe. I arrived at the office early, before anyone else, hoping to sort through the mess in my head without interruptions. Except someone had beaten me. There. The door to my makeshift office was slightly ajar, the lock jimmied open. Inside, papers were scattered across the floor, drawers pulled out and dumped carelessly. My stomach dropped as I frantically searched for the folder containing the incriminating documents. Gone. Just gone. Whoever broke in hadn't taken anything else, just the evidence that could bring down Greg, ruin Cedar Ridge Financial, and destroy whatever remained of Dad's reputation. Panic clawed at my throat, making it hard to swallow, harder still to think clearly. This wasn't just about exposure anymore. This was personal. Someone knew exactly what I was up to, and they weren't playing games. For the first time since, this whole nightmare began. I allowed myself to consider the possibility that I might not make it out unscathed. What if they came after me next? What if exposing the truth didn't just cost me my job or my pride, but something far worse? As if on cue, Greg called an emergency meeting later that day. His voice boomed over the intercom system, commanding everyone to gather in the conference room immediately. When I walked in, he was already pacing back and forth, his face red, his hands clenched into fists. "We have a situation," he announced, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. Then he turned to me, his gaze drilling into mine like he wanted to burn a hole straight through me. "Clara, care to explain why confidential company records are missing?" My knees buckled, though I somehow managed to stay upright. The room spun, voices blending into a dull roar as everyone stared at me, waiting for an explanation I didn't have. How could I defend myself when I didn't even know who'd stolen the files, or why? Was this Greg's doing? A desperate attempt to shift blame onto me? Or was it someone else? Someone closer, trying to protect their own secrets by pinning them on me? Either way, I was trapped, cornered like an animal with nowhere left to run. Rachel chimed in then, her voice soft but cutting. "If Clara can't account for the missing documents, maybe we need to reconsider her role here." Her words hung in the air like a death sentence, heavy and final. Murmurs rippled through the room as people exchanged uneasy glances. Some looked sympathetic, others skeptical, but none stepped forward to defend me. Not one person. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. And yet, even as fear threatened to consume me, anger bubbled beneath the surface, hot and relentless. Anger at Greg for treating me like a pawn. Anger at Rachel for pretending to care while secretly stabbing me in the back. Anger at Dad for leaving me to clean up his mess. But most of all, anger at myself, for letting them push me around, for doubting my instincts, for hesitating when action was required. Because here's the truth. They weren't just coming for me. They were coming for the truth, and if I didn't stand my ground now, they'd bury it forever. So here's the question. When the stakes are life or death, when the world is watching and waiting for you to crumble, do you fight back, even if it means risking everything? Or do you fold, hoping to salvage what little remains? Stick around, because I'm about to find out. And so are you. You ever feel like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind whipping around you, daring you to take one more step? That's where I was, right on the brink, with nothing but thin air between me and whatever lay below. Every decision felt heavier than the last, every second ticking by like it was mocking me, counting down to something irreversible. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, no matter how tightly I clenched them into fists. Sleep? Forget about it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Greg's smug face, Rachel's calculating smile, the missing files scattered across my office floor. And Dad, always Dad. His signature staring back at me from those pages, his absence looming larger than ever. I couldn't sit still. Pacing helped, sort of, but only enough to keep me from screaming. Or maybe crying. Honestly, I wasn't sure which would come first anymore. I replayed everything in my head. The late-night email, the broken lock, the stolen files, Greg's accusation in front of everyone. Was this all part of some master plan? Had they been working together all along? Or was I just collateral damage in their own private war? Either way, I was running out of options, and time. Because whoever had the files wasn't going to sit on them forever. They'd use them, twist them, turn them against me if I didn't act fast. But act how? That's what kept me up at night, pacing circles in my apartment until the soles of my feet ached. Do I go public? Walk into the authorities, spill everything I know, and hope they believe me over Greg and his connections? What if they don't? What if I'm left holding the bag while he walks away scot-free? And then there's Rachel. What role is she really playing in all this? Is she protecting herself? Or is she setting me up to take the fall? She's smart, manipulative even. Too smart to leave loose ends. Which means maybe I'm the loose end. The clock was ticking louder now, each tick echoing in my skull like a countdown to disaster. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Or maybe I just hadn't wanted to see them. The way Greg avoided looking at me during meetings, like guilt was written all over his face. The way Rachel lingered too long outside my office, pretending to organize papers but clearly eavesdropping. The whispers that followed me everywhere I went, growing louder, more urgent. Everyone knew something was coming. They could feel it, in the air, thick and electric, but no one knew exactly what, except maybe me. And if I hesitated any longer, it might be too late. And then there were the memories. God, the memories. They hit me hardest at night, when the world went quiet and there was nothing left to distract me. Memories of Dad leaving, Mom crying, the silence stretching between us for years. Memories of walking into that office for the first time, determined to prove myself, only to have them throw me away like trash. Memories of finding those files, realizing Dad wasn't the man I thought he was. Each memory felt like a weight pressing down on me, crushing me under the burden of choices I wasn't ready to make. But here's the thing about being backed into a corner. Eventually, you stop thinking about survival and start thinking about fighting back. Not because you want to, necessarily, but because you have to. There's no other way out. So I made a decision. Not fully formed, not perfect, but decisive. I called the investigator who'd given me the files, the one who'd warned me about Cedar Ridge Financial in the first place. "We need to meet," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Tonight." He agreed without hesitation, which told me two things. One, he believed me, and two, he knew exactly how dangerous this situation was. As I drove to the meeting spot, a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of town, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking straight into a trap. But what choice did I have? Stay silent and let them win? Let Greg and Rachel bury the truth along with my dad's legacy? No. Absolutely not. If I was going down, I was taking the whole house of cards with me. So here's the question. When you're faced with your worst nightmare, when every move feels like it could destroy you, do you trust yourself to make the right call? Or do you let fear dictate your next step? Stick around, because Clara's about to risk everything, and you won't believe what happens next. Hit subscribe now to follow her journey of courage, betrayal, and redemption. Don't miss the explosive finale waiting just ahead. The diner was quiet, almost eerily so. The kind of place where the hum of a neon sign buzzes louder than any conversation, and the air smells faintly of burnt coffee and stale fries. I sat in a booth near the back, my fingers drumming nervously against the cracked vinyl seat. Every creak of the door made me jump. Every shadow that passed outside the window felt like a threat. My stomach churned, nausea twisting tighter with each passing second. What if this was a mistake? What if walking into this meeting meant sealing my fate? When the investigator finally walked in, his face was grim, his jaw set like he'd already accepted the worst-case scenario. He slid into the booth across from me, placing a manila envelope on the table between us. "Clara," he said, his voice low but steady. "You need to understand something before we go further. This isn't just about Cedar Ridge Financial. It's bigger than that. Bigger than you." His words landed like a punch to the gut. Of course it was bigger than me. Everything always was. But hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. I opened the envelope with trembling hands, spilling its contents onto the table. Photos, bank statements, emails, all pieces of a puzzle I hadn't fully understood until now. Names jumped off the pages, familiar ones like Greg's and Rachel's, but also others, politicians, investors, even law enforcement officials. A web of corruption so vast it made my head spin. And at the center of it all, my dad's name scrawled over and over again, like some sick signature tying everything together. My breath hitched as I flipped through the documents, trying to process what I was seeing. Dad wasn't just complicit. He was key, essential, the linchpin holding the whole operation together. "You can't fight this alone," the investigator warned, leaning closer. "These people, they don't play fair. They'll destroy anyone who gets in their way." His eyes bore into mine, searching for signs of doubt, hesitation, weakness. But instead of fear, something else bubbled up inside me. Anger. White-hot, blinding anger. Not just at Greg or Rachel or whoever else was involved, but at Dad. At myself. At the universe for putting me here, right now, forced to carry this weight. By the time I left the diner, my mind was racing faster than my car speeding down the empty highway. I didn't have a plan, not really, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let them win. Whoever they were, whatever they stood for, I wouldn't let them bury the truth. Not this time. So I drove straight to the office, ignoring the late hour, ignoring the voice in my head screaming that this was reckless, dangerous, suicidal. When I arrived, the building was dark except for Greg's office light. Figures, control freaks never sleep. I marched inside, my heels clicking sharply against the tile floor, echoing like gunshots in the silence. Greg looked up from his desk when I barged in, startled but quickly masking it with irritation. "What are you doing here?" he snapped, standing to meet me. His tone was sharp, dismissive, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. Fear? Guilt? Whatever it was, it fueled me. "You think you can intimidate me?" I shot back, slamming the folder onto his desk. Papers spilled out, revealing the evidence of his crimes in black and white. "You think stealing those files will save you?" Newsflash, Greg, it's too late. I know everything. For a moment, he froze, his face pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Then he lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he hissed, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "If you expose this, you'll regret it. You'll lose everything." But I didn't flinch. Not this time. "I already lost everything," I spat, jerking free from his grip. "You fired me, remember? You threw me away like I was nothing. Well, guess what? I'm done being your pawn. I'm done being invisible. If I go down, I'm taking you with me." That's when Rachel appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. For a split second, I thought she was there to support Greg, to protect herself. But then she stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "She's right," she said softly, her gaze fixed on Greg. "It's over." Greg's face twisted in disbelief. "Rachel, don't... I'm sorry," she interrupted, her voice firmer now. She turned to me, her eyes filled with something I hadn't expected. Guilt. "I didn't want it to come to this, but you deserve the truth." With that, she pulled out her phone and hit play, filling the room with a recording, a confession from Greg himself, detailing every dirty deal, every bribe, every lie. The sound of his own voice admitting his crimes shattered whatever control he still clung to. As the recording played, Greg sank into his chair, defeated, broken. Rachel stood beside me, not quite an ally, but no longer an enemy either. And me? I felt nothing. No triumph, no relief, no satisfaction, just emptiness. Because while I'd won this battle, the war wasn't over. Not yet. So here's the question. When you've faced your greatest challenge and come out the other side, do you feel stronger or just more hollow? Stick around. because the next chapter is coming, and it might change everything. Just when I thought it was over, when Greg sat slumped in his chair, defeated, and Rachel stood frozen beside me like she didn't know whether to run or stay, I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, echoing down the hallway outside Greg's office. My heart stopped. Who could possibly be here at this hour? For a moment, we all just stared at the door, waiting, holding our breaths like prey caught in headlights. And then he walked in. A man in his late 50s, dressed in an expensive suit that screamed authority. His face was sharp, his eyes cold and calculating. But what made my stomach drop wasn't his presence. It was the way Greg reacted. The color drained from Greg's face so fast I thought he might faint. "Mr. Caldwell," he stammered, scrambling to his feet, his voice cracking under the weight of pure terror. "I can explain." "No, you can't," the man interrupted, his tone icy, final. He didn't even glance at me or Rachel. His focus was laser sharp on Greg. "You've been reckless, sloppy." Then he turned those piercing eyes on me, and I swear, for a second, I forgot how to breathe. "Clara Hayes," he said, as if tasting my name. "Your father did good work for us. Pity he had to leave." My knees buckled. Literally. I reached out to steady myself against Greg's desk, my mind spinning so fast I couldn't form words. Us? Work? What was he talking about? Before I could ask, Mr. Caldwell pulled out a flash drive from his pocket and placed it on the desk between us. "This contains everything you need to take Cedar Ridge Financial apart," he said calmly, almost casually. "But destroying it won't fix anything. You'll only make enemies stronger than you realize." "What are you saying?" I finally managed, my voice shaking despite every effort to sound strong. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not now, not like this. I'd come here ready to fight, to expose the truth, to bring justice. But instead, I felt like I'd stepped into some twisted game where the rules kept changing without warning. Caldwell leaned closer, his gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that left no room for escape. "Your father wasn't just complicit, Clara. He worked for me, for people far above him. When he disappeared, he wasn't running from them. He was protecting you. From me." The words hit me like a freight train, knocking the wind out of me. Protecting me? From this? It didn't make sense, but deep down, I knew it was true. All those years of silence, of unanswered questions, they weren't accidents. They were choices. Sacrifices. Rachel shifted uncomfortably beside me, her earlier confidence replaced by unease. Even Greg looked smaller somehow, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "Why tell me this now?" I demanded, my voice rising despite myself. "Why give me the power to destroy something you clearly care about?" "Because," Caldwell said, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, "you're exactly like your father. Stubborn, determined, dangerous, and if anyone can clean up this mess, it's you." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving the three of us standing in stunned silence. The air felt heavier after he left, like the world itself had tilted off its axis. Everything I thought I knew, the betrayal, the lies, the guilt, it was all tangled up in something far bigger than I'd imagined. And suddenly, I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was carrying Dad's legacy, his unfinished business, his impossible choices. So here's the question. If someone handed you the keys to dismantle an empire, but warned you it would unleash chaos, would you do it? Or would you walk away, hoping to shield yourself, and everyone else, from the fallout? Stick around because Clara's decision will change everything, and yours might too. Hit subscribe now to experience stories filled with shocking twists and unforgettable turns. Don't miss what happens next. It's closer than you think. The silence in Greg's office was deafening, like the kind of quiet that follows a storm, when you're still waiting to see if another wave is coming. I stood there, staring at the flash drive Caldwell had left behind, my mind racing faster than it ever had before. This tiny piece of plastic and metal held the power to destroy everything, to expose lies, dismantle empires, ruin lives, but it also held something else. Responsibility. A choice only I could make. And for the first time, I realized that wasn't terrifying. It was freeing. I thought about Dad. Not the man who left us, not the ghost whose name haunted every document I'd uncovered, but the person he must have been. The father who stayed up late teaching me how to ride a bike, who laughed so hard milk came out of his nose during breakfast one morning, who tucked me into bed with stories about knights and dragons and heroes who saved the day. That man didn't disappear because he didn't care. He disappeared because he loved me enough to shield me from the ugliness of the world. From this. From Caldwell. From the web of corruption he couldn't escape. And here I was, standing where he once stood, holding the same burden he carried for years. For so long I resented him for leaving, blamed him for abandoning Mom and me. But now I understood. He didn't leave because he wanted to. He left because he had no other choice. Because staying would have meant dragging us into the darkness, with him. And as much as it hurt to admit, part of me wished he'd trusted me enough to tell me the truth, to let me help him fight instead of running alone. But this wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. About who I was going to be moving forward. Was I going to let fear dictate my next move? Let anger drive me to burn it all down without considering the consequences? Or was I going to step into the role Dad never wanted for me? The role of someone brave enough to face the truth even when it hurt. I looked at Rachel, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes wide with uncertainty. She wasn't the enemy, not really. Just a woman trying to survive in a system rigged against people like us. And Greg, well, Greg was already broken, sitting slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. Whatever power he thought he had was gone, stripped away by Caldwell's words and the recording she'd brought to light. None of them were untouchable. Not anymore. Neither was I. So I made my decision. Slowly, deliberately, I picked up the flash drive and slipped it into my pocket. "This doesn't belong to any of us," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside me. "It belongs to the truth, and the truth deserves better than revenge." Then I turned to Rachel. "Help me fix this. Together." She hesitated, shock flickering across her face. "Why trust me?" she asked quietly, almost like she was afraid to hear the answer. "Because we're stronger together," I replied simply. "And because deep down you're not as bad as you pretend to be." For a moment, she just stared at me, searching for something. Validation, forgiveness, maybe hope. Finally, she nodded, a small but genuine smile breaking through the tension. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's do it." As we walked out of Greg's office, leaving him behind in the wreckage of his own making, I felt lighter somehow. Like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for years. The weight of betrayal, guilt, anger, it hadn't disappeared completely, but it no longer controlled me. I wasn't the same woman who walked into Cedar Ridge Financial months ago, desperate to prove herself. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone capable of carrying Dad's legacy without letting it crush me. That night, as I drove home under a sky full of stars, I thought about transformation. How pain shapes us, challenges mold us, and choices define us. Dad taught me that, even if he never said the words aloud. He showed me what it means to sacrifice for love, to carry burdens others can't bear, to fight battles bigger than yourself. And now, it was my turn to take those lessons and build something better, something real. So here's the question. When life hands you a chance to rewrite your story, will you rise to meet it, or let fear hold you back? Comment below and share your thoughts on transformation and learning. Because everyone has a moment where they decide who they want to be. What will yours look like? The next morning, I called a press conference. It wasn't planned perfectly. I didn't have weeks to strategize or rehearse. But it didn't need to be perfect. What it needed was honesty, transparency, truth. So there I stood, in front of cameras and reporters and a crowd that had gathered, out of curiosity, holding nothing but the flash drive Caldwell gave me and the weight of everything I'd learned over the past few months. My hand shook slightly as I adjusted the microphone, but my voice stayed steady when I finally spoke. This is a story about power, I began, looking directly into the cameras so anyone watching would feel like I was speaking to them personally. Not the kind of power that comes from money or influence, but the kind that grows when people choose to look away. For years, Cedar Ridge Financial operated under a veil of secrecy, hiding illegal activities behind polished desks and fake smiles. And while many were complicit, none of us, not employees, not clients, not even me, deserved to be betrayed by the very system we trusted. I paused, letting the words sink in. The murmurs rippled through the crowd, soft at first, then louder, more urgent. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, their cameras flashing like strobe lights. But I didn't stop. Not now. This was my moment to finish what Dad started, to expose the rot at the core of this empire and demand accountability. Inside this flash drive, I continued, holding it up for everyone to see, are documents detailing corruption, bribery, and crimes committed by individuals whose names you may recognize. Some of these people are still in positions of authority today. Others have fled, thinking they're untouchable. But let me make one thing clear. No one is above justice. No amount of wealth or connections can erase wrongdoing. And if you think destroying evidence will protect you, I let the sentence trail off, my gaze sweeping across the sea of faces before landing on Greg, who sat slumped in the back row, his head bowed in defeat. You're wrong. There was a collective gasp, followed by an eruption of questions shouted all at once. Who's involved? How long has this been going on? What happens next? I raised my hand to quiet them, my heart pounding with adrenaline. What happens next, I said firmly, is change. Real change. Starting today, Cedar Ridge Financial will undergo a full investigation led by independent auditors. Every transaction, every decision, every shadowy corner will be brought into the light. Those responsible will face consequences. Those affected will receive answers. And those who thought they could hide behind lies, they'll learn that silence isn't protection, it's complicity. When I finished speaking, the applause was deafening. People cheered, some cried, others hugged strangers beside them like we'd just won a shared victory. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every angle, every expression. It felt surreal, almost dreamlike, like I was floating outside my body watching someone else take control. But deep down, I knew it was real. This wasn't just a win for me. It was a win for everyone who'd ever felt powerless against a corrupt system. A win for Dad, whose sacrifices hadn't been in vain after all. Afterward, Rachel found me backstage, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You did it, she whispered, her voice trembling. You actually did it. I nodded, pulling her into a hug, a gesture that surprised both of us. We did it, I corrected softly. Together. As the dust settled, the fallout began. Greg resigned immediately, disappearing from public view entirely. Rachel stepped up to lead the internal restructuring efforts, proving herself capable of far more than I'd initially given her credit for. Employees rallied around each other, determined to rebuild trust and integrity within the company. Clients returned slowly, but surely. reassured by transparency measures we put in place. And Caldwell? He vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of his existence. Whether he approved of my decision or regretted trusting me, I'll never know, and honestly, I don't care. His game ended the moment I chose truth over fear. But the biggest change happened inside me. I stopped carrying the weight of resentment, of anger, of unanswered questions. Instead, I carried hope. Hope that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, can spark a chain reaction of healing. Hope that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Hope that Dad, wherever he was, could finally rest, knowing his daughter finished what he started. So here's the question. When faced with your darkest hour, will you rise to meet it, or let it define you? Stick around, because Clara's journey doesn't end here. There's always more to discover, more to fight for, more to become. Life doesn't go back to normal after something like that. Not really. It shifts, reshapes itself into something new, something fragile but stronger in its own way. For me, the days following the press conference were a blur of interviews, meetings, and late-night strategy sessions. Every hour felt like it carried the weight of years, every decision pushing us closer to rebuilding what had been broken. But through it all, I noticed something surprising. People change when they're given a chance to prove themselves. Not just others, but me too. Rachel was the first to surprise me. She'd always struck me as ambitious to a fault, willing to step on anyone to climb the ladder. But after everything went public, she didn't run or hide. She stepped up. She worked tirelessly alongside me, poring over files, meeting with auditors, and even addressing employees directly during town halls. Her voice shook during those first few speeches. Hell, so did mine. But eventually she found her footing. Watching her transform from someone I distrusted into someone I could rely on made me realize how much perception can blind us. Maybe Rachel wasn't perfect, but neither was I. And maybe that's okay. Greg, on the other hand, faded into obscurity almost immediately. One day he was there, seething silently in the corner of his office, and the next, he was gone. No grand exit, no apology tour, just silence. At first, I thought about tracking him down, confronting him one last time to say everything I'd been holding back. But then I realized something important. Greg wasn't worth my energy anymore. He'd already lost the only thing that mattered to him, his power, and nothing I said would change that. Letting go of that anger felt like shedding an old skin, leaving behind something heavy and suffocating. And then there was Caldwell, or rather, the absence of Caldwell. After he walked out of Greg's office that night, he disappeared completely. No calls, no emails, no trace of him anywhere. Part of me wondered if he'd orchestrated the whole thing, a test to see if I'd crumble under pressure or rise to meet it. Another part of me didn't care. Whatever game he was playing, I'd chosen not to play along. Instead, I used the tools he gave me to dismantle the system he represented. If he regretted trusting me, well, that was his problem, not mine. But the biggest transformation? That was internal. Mine. For so long, I carried this hollow ache inside me, a mix of anger, guilt, and longing for answers that never came. Losing Dad felt like losing myself. But now, standing on the other side of the storm, I understood something crucial. Closure isn't about having all the answers. It's about learning to live without them. Dad wasn't perfect. He left scars, choices I'll never fully understand. But he also gave me strength. The kind of strength that comes from knowing you're capable of carrying burdens bigger than yourself. And while I'll never stop missing him, I finally feel like I'm honoring his memory instead of being haunted by it. The ripple effects spread beyond just me, though. Employees who once whispered behind closed doors now spoke openly about their frustrations, their fears, their hopes for the future. They weren't just rebuilding trust in the company. They were rebuilding trust in each other. Clients returned cautiously at first, testing the waters before committing fully. But slowly, steadily, loyalty began to take root again. Loyalty earned through transparency, accountability, and hard work. Even Rachel and I started building something resembling friendship, sharing moments of laughter amidst the chaos. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was real. And sometimes, real is enough. Through it all, I learned lessons I'll carry with me forever. About forgiveness, not because it erases pain, but because it frees you from carrying it. About courage, not as some grand gesture, but as a series of small, deliberate choices to face fear head-on. About legacy, not as wealth or titles, but as the impact we leave behind on the people and places we touch. Dad taught me those lessons, even if he never said the words aloud. Now, it's my turn to pass them on. So here's the question. When life forces you to confront your deepest fears, do you let them break you? Or do you use them to build something better? Stick around because Clara's story proves that transformation isn't just possible, it's inevitable. There's a moment in every storm when you realize you're not just fighting to survive, you're fighting to become someone new, someone stronger, braver, more honest with yourself and the world around you. That's what this whole journey has been about for me. Learning who I am when the odds are stacked against me, when the weight of betrayal and loss threatens to crush me whole. And let me tell you, the lessons I've learned aren't just mine. They belong to anyone willing to listen, to reflect, to grow. The first lesson? Forgiveness isn't easy, but it's necessary. Not because it fixes everything or makes the pain go away. It doesn't. What forgiveness does is free you. For years, I carried resentment toward Dad, blaming him for leaving, for abandoning us without explanation. But now I see that his absence wasn't rejection, it was protection. A sacrifice so huge, so painful, that I couldn't comprehend it until I stood where he once stood. Letting go of that anger didn't mean forgetting him. It meant honoring him by choosing love over bitterness. So here's the real question. How many of us are holding on to grudges we don't even want anymore? How much lighter would life feel if we chose to forgive, not for them, but for us? Then there's courage. People talk about it like it's some grand, heroic act, like running into a burning building or standing up to a villain in a movie. But real courage is quieter than that. It's showing up when you'd rather hide. It's speaking truth when lies feel safer. It's taking one step forward even though your legs are shaking and your heart feels like it might explode out of your chest. I didn't feel brave calling that press conference or exposing Cedar Ridge Financial's corruption. I felt terrified. But I did it anyway. Because sometimes courage isn't about feeling fearless. It's about acting despite fear. Think about your own life. When was the last time you faced something hard head-on? What did it teach you? And finally, legacy. We spend so much time chasing things we think will define us. Money, success, titles. But none of that matters if we lose sight of what truly lasts. The impact we have on others. Dad didn't leave behind wealth or fame. He left behind questions, sacrifices, choices that shaped my life in ways I'm still unraveling. But through those choices, he taught me what it means to stand for something bigger than yourself. To protect the people you love, even if it costs you everything. Legacy isn't about perfection. It's about connection. About leaving the world a little better than you found it. So ask yourself, what kind of mark do you want to leave behind? Who will remember you and why? This story isn't just about me, it's about all of us. About the moments that test us, the choices that define us, and the transformations that shape us. It's about realizing that pain doesn't have to break us. It can build us, if we let it. If I can face the ghosts of my past, dismantle an empire of lies and find hope in the wreckage, then maybe you can too. Maybe we all can. So here's the question. When life pushes you to your limits, how do you rise instead of falling? Have you ever faced a moment that forced you to grow in ways you never expected? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Because transformation isn't just personal, it's universal. And together, we can remind each other that no matter how dark the night gets, dawn always comes.